Hey everyone, how's it going today? It is Sunday at 11:25 a.m. and I'm just making another video today. I wanted to talk about a very specific topic, self-love and the dichotomy of it. What the hell? Don't know where that came from. Stay. Self-love, the dichotomy of it. You've got to love yourself. You really do. And a lot of people do to some extent, but also don't see where they kind of dig into who they are. Now, I talked about this in another video about sort of positive and negative self-talk or positive or negative um self-awareness. I went over this in another video, but I'm kind of going a different direction with this. So there is a specifically with self-love, there is a very toxic phrase that exists in sort of the mainstream headspace of most people. And a friend of mine actually brought this up, and we kind of had this discussion. It was me, him, and another friend years ago now, and it kind of stuck with me. His name was Akiva, and he had a really good point. We had another friend who was disappointed, who was upset. He had this girl that he really liked who was interested in him, but who he was worried it wasn't going to work out because, and this is the phrase, this is the quote here, you can't love someone else if you don't love yourself, right? You have to love yourself before you love someone else. I'm putting it in quotes because I've heard that so much. And that phrase in of itself is a toxic statement. And most people don't think about it the way because unfortunately the reality is that if you have never been loved or if people don't if you don't have love, it's very, 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 very difficult. And in fact, it's almost impossible for you to love yourself the way you're supposed to. And so there is something to be said about having some kind of self-confidence and liking who you are so that you don't put your problems on other people. That I get that. But on the other side of things, it's sometimes for people, at least it was this way for me, you don't really begin to love yourself until other people love you first. And this is why anybody who becomes famous or becomes successful, they're always thanking their friends or their parents or so and so stuck by me the whole way. That's what gave them the ability to love who they were, was that someone else loved that. And most people who are in that position inherently realize that without that love and support, they wouldn't have been able to succeed and make it to where they're going. And so self-love in my mind, it's kind of a two-way street. You have to love yourself, but people also have to love you too, because doing one without the other, those things go hand in hand. And this is kind of something that a lot of people don't really address when they talk about self-love and how to love yourself. They don't talk about that. They don't talk about the other side of the coin. And what I mean is that it's good to love yourself, but you can love yourself too much to the point where you don't adjust and adapt and realize that you have negative traits that you need to work on. And so you don't. And you can also not love yourself enough, not because you don't want to, but because other people don't love who you are. Because it's you have these issues that you've built up over time from people constantly rejecting you or constantly talking down to you or constantly making fun of you. It's difficult for someone who is, for example, a social outcast to love who they are if they also don't have any friends. And this is what you find out a lot about depression, and particularly people that are really, really depressed. you find out that a lot of them don't have a supportive social circle that helps them to love themselves. And I've seen over time sort of this growth and rise of friend groups or organizations, even online and whatnot, where people make it a big point to express that they love other people, that people that are there are included and they're loved, because people don't get that enough. The reality is that there's so much emphasis on the self and on self-love and on being your best self that for a lot of people there's not a lot of emphasis on reinforcing that, what is being your self? How do you know who your best self is? That's always the question that I think of in my brain is how do I know, how does one know they're a good person, for example? I can say I'm a good person all day long, but obviously if everyone else disagrees with me, that's not accurate. If everyone else thinks I'm an asshole, by definition, I'm an asshole, right? And I'm not saying that's true. I mean, there are people out there that say, I'm talking about if every person you interact with says you're an asshole, statistically speaking, you're probably an asshole. And I mean, I'm sorry to say it that way, but there's no, given all the information you have, it would be very odd. This isn't the Truman Show. It'd be very odd for all these people that may not even know each other, that even people you interact with a couple of times or whatever, all these people that don't know each other all have the same perspective about you as a person. So when we talk about self-love, it's important to remember and always remember that self-love is inherently tied to love from others. And we could see this psychologically, that people tend to love themselves more when they have other people around them who also love them. And we're not talking about yes men. I mean, you could argue yes men. We're talking about people that genuinely care about someone's well-being and want them to do well. Those people tend to have more stable emotions and tend to be happier, tend to love themselves more. It's when people have family members that don't care about them, or parents that check out, or they have this kind of environment where it's like, yeah, nobody gives a shit about you. You don't matter. No one will ever care about you. That you see this sort of soaking in of negative thoughts about the self. Generally, I mean, we know this realistically. Families in broken homes and whatnot, the children often blame themselves. All these characteristics create this recipe in my mind: a broken home, unfulfilling familial relationships, unfulfilling friendships. All these things together create a recipe for one to not like themselves, to feel like it's their fault that their family's having problems, that they don't have friends, that they're not with the person they should be with. And I know from personal experience, like that can get bad. Like it can build up to a point where you just feel hopeless, where you feel like you're not good enough and that nobody cares. And so it's hard to love who you are at that point. And it's been a long journey of years for me to kind of grow to that point where I've kind of embraced who I am and I love it. And so to kind of close this out here with the self love bit, all right, it's important when it comes down to self love that you love who you are for the good things you have that other people also agree with. Make sure you listen to other people, not all the time, but somewhat. Like you should take people that you trust and that you know care about you's opinion into consideration regularly. You also need to make sure that you don't beat yourself up, because without other people loving you, it is difficult to love yourself. And it's a challenge to get over that hurdle. and you don't want to tear yourself apart. You want to look at, particularly with self love, you want to look at yourself kind of more objectively and let go, like, look, well, what can I work on to be a better person? And at the same time, cut yourself a break and realize that it's not always your fault that things don't happen the way you want to. All in all, I just want everyone to know that, and I know it's kind of crazy, but that if you're watching this or if you're not watching this, I am a person that sort of kind of loves everybody. And I don't mean it like in a happy, it's a small world after all. Like, I mean, like, genuinely, like, I genuinely care about other people, and I want every person to know that, generally speaking, I give a shit about them because that's just how I am. So if you're watching this or you're not, chances are you're loved by me. I give a shit. I care about you and I want you to grow. I want everyone around me to grow and be better people because I believe we can. But the first part of that is being able to look at what's going on and actually see what's wrong and work on it. Have a good day. If you like this, like and subscribe. And please, please, please take care of yourself and take care of the people you care about because both those things are always interconnected.